You're listening to Coach Mike on the mic. Let's talk hoops. A podcast that brings hoop fans together and their stories to life. Coach Michael Herrera is a Texas high school basketball coach with 3 state Final Four appearances and a lifelong fan of the game. He'll sit down with coaches, players, and fans to share stories, game perspectives, X's and O's, and lessons learned along the way. Now, let's talk hoops.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Coach Mike on the mic. Let's talk hoops. After a break for the basketball season, it's time to jump back into interviews with coaches, players, and anyone who has a story to tell. Today, I sit down with legendary NBA coach and player Jim Cleamons, who has 10 NBA championships under his belt. 1 as a player and 9 as a coach. One heck of a story. Coach Jim Cleamons has been blessed with both an NBA playing career with the likes of Elgin Baylor, Wilt Chamberlain, and Jerry West, and coaching stints with Phil Jackson with the Bulls and the Lakers. He's coached the likes of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, 2 of the game's best players of all time. This interview will be broken into 2 episodes, and without further ado, please enjoy this episode with Coach Jim Cleamons.
All right, well, welcome back to another episode of Coach Mike on the mic. Let's talk hoops. I am your host, Michael Herrera, and I get the pleasure of sitting down with one of my high school buddies from MacArthur High School here in San Antonio, Dario Davis. I appreciate you taking some time to visit with me today, but the honor is all mine to have you, Coach Jim Cleamons, on this episode. And not too many times someone gets to interview a 10-time NBA champion and a defensive player of the year and a state champion in the high school. So I really appreciate the both of you guys taking some time to visit with me today.
My pleasure.
Now, it's time for Layup Lines.
All right, well, the beginning of this episode, I'm going to start off by asking you 5 questions. I call this layup lines. You know, we're all familiar. We're all hoop heads, and we understand you got both teams kind of warming up on either end of the basketball court, kind of filling each other out. When you make your way to half court, you're kind of looking over there to see who you're sizing up against. So for right now, we'll just do 5 random questions, and then you guys will have a chance to shoot them back at me. So first question I have for you, Coach, is who is your favorite basketball player of all time? Dead, alive, someone you played with, someone that you aspired to be like?
Elgin Baylor was my guy growing up.
That's awesome, man. And then you had the pleasure of playing with him, right?
Played with him through training camp, and the first month of the season, then he decided that he'd had enough and he retired.
I got you. We'll kind of touch in that in a little bit here. Question number 2. Best road city to visit while on the NBA circuit, either playing or coaching?
Oh, wow. I used to like the Golden State area.
Okay.
I liked the weather because you coming from out of Cleveland, and the weather was always little jacket, fresh breeze. And I like the way the mentality of the people in that part of California. They seem to always to be aware of the social and the political life, and very, very astute. So I there in Washington, D.C. were probably my 2 favorite, because the people I thought were well-rounded people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so those are my 2, and I don't want to choose between.
All right, I got you. All right, question number 3. So this one, I had to change the question, but I'm going to change it to, and I apologize in advance. Ohio State butchered a lot of people's brackets with this Oral Roberts victory. So my question to you is, I guess my first kind of question to this, there's 2 parts to this. Did you make a bracket?
No.
Okay. So in that sense, I'll kind of change my question a little bit. Who in the NCAA tournament so far has your head kind of shaken, whether that's positive or negative, the surprise or the upset?
Well, I'm really loving the way the team beat Texas last night.
Yep.
I can't remember the college name, but I'm
Abilene
loving.
Christian.
I'm loving the way they are playing the game. I saw them play earlier in the week, and the energy that they brought with them and the way they played with each other for each other.
Amen.
It touched my heart.
Yep, absolutely. They're a team, and they kind of messed up my bracket. I was kind of hoping for a Big 12 showdown between Texas Tech and Texas to get into the Final Four or the Elite Eight, I think it was. But hey, it's basketball season. That's all that matters, man.
Yeah.
All right, question number 4. If you could go back in time and high five yourself for something that you did, what would you go back in time and high five yourself for?
Just having the career that I had is to me, I'm just truly blessed, and so that's a gift from the Creator.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate the life I've been fortunate enough to live.
Yep. Amen. Amen to that. I've heard, obviously before this podcast, I've been kind of brushing up and watching some interviews of yours, and you use that word a lot, and I do too. We are truly blessed, and I'm blessed to be sitting in front of you today too. So, last question for you. If this was a podcast called Coach Jim on the Mic, who would you want to be sitting down talking with?
Oh, wow. Well, one of my all-time favorite people is Lenny Wilkins, and I would love to just have good conversation with Lenny. Okay. I mean, there are 3 people that have been in the Hall. They're in the Hall of Fame twice, and I've been blessed to have 2 of them cross my path: John Wooden, Lenny Wilkins, and Bill Sharman. And 2 of the 3 have had an impact on me, and I feel very fortunate. Lenny took me underneath his wing when he was traded. We were both traded to Cleveland the same year, and I had opportunity to be the 3rd guard behind him and Austin Carson's other starter. But he taught me about being a point guard and to be a leader. And in those days, I needed every lesson. Every lesson that he could give, I needed it.
That's fantastic. We are definitely blessed to have certain people in our life to mentor us, and that's an amazing thing. And I hope I can do that for my athletes. But that'd be a great interview, man. Well, those are my 5 questions. Y'all go ahead and piggyback and y'all shoot 5 shallow-ended questions at me, and then we'll get started.
Well,
Uncle Jim, go ahead.
Well, how did you get started in this business? What took you in this direction?
So, long story short, grew up in San Antonio and played sports my entire life, basketball being my most favorite sport. I didn't always have my eyes set on coaching basketball. Matter of fact, I think every young kid's dream is to play in the NBA. And as a 5'11" Hispanic kid out of San Antonio, Texas, my dreams are pretty shot, but I had aspirations of becoming an NBA physician. That was my real dream. Being down here in San Antonio, obviously I love the Spurs. And so that was my dream: go to medical school, become a doctor, and try to become a team physician in the NBA. Lo and behold, I ended up going on to school, getting my master's in physiology. And it was then when I was teaching and mentoring younger, people that are just a few years younger than me. I was actually teaching and coaching basketball while I was working on my master's, and fell in love with it. Fell in love with just kind of having those eyes looking at you for feedback, for information, to coaching them up. And then that's when I knew that I wanted to coach basketball. With my medical background, I had to get a certification in the state of Texas. So I had to go work in the medical field for 2 years so that I could become a Texas high school teacher. And then I've been coaching and teaching since then for the last 15 years here in the San Antonio area. So it's just kind of like, one door opened after another and fell into it. But I've always had a passion for the youth, for mentoring, guiding, and teaching. So it just kind of came to sorts about 15 years ago, and I love it. It truly is a blessing that I've been able to survive this field of education when so many people are getting out of it. But no, I love it with a passion. So good question.
All right.
So, Mike, I've known you a long time, and your answer to my uncle is very, very much in line. What have you learned from your athletes? Because you are the coach, you are the leader, but with the teacher, what the talk creates teaching. How we can learn. What have they taught you or reminded you of when you were in high school?
You know what? The first thing that's a really good question. I don't have an answer. Probably this is one of those things where I want to sit and think about it before I answer you. But the first thing that was running through my mind as you were asking that question is just to be reminded that they're just kids. I don't claim to be the best coach ever, the best basketball player ever, but I have more experience in my lifetime than they've been alive. And so I have to remember that they're still learning this trade. They're resilient. They're, for the most part, the good ones are going to want to learn from you. And so I just think that they've taught me to have a lot of patience with them because it comes natural to me in my mind in coaching, but they're learning it for the first time. So I've got to be very patient. So that's what I would say that they've been able to teach me.
Question. Young people are always very competitive. How are you teaching them to cope with losing?
Woo. Y'all giving me some loaded questions, man. These are like interview questions that I'm going to like go off and go coach mode for a second. But and I, you know what? I'm going to answer because this is more about you than it is about me. But I'll answer it shortly by how my philosophy as a coach is. In every loss, don't lose the lesson. And that's how I approach losing. When we do lose, what's our lesson? Whether we're watching it in film or studying, the game afterwards, don't lose the lesson in that loss.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Who's been the best teammate that you've had or you've seen as a coach? You don't have to name this person, but kind of describe, whether they were talented or not, who is really, and maybe you can say them by name, but be it someone you've played with or coach who is really.
Yeah, that's now your Dario, your audio is kind of going in and out, but I think I gathered your question. You said teammate or coach?
Yeah. Like who's really inspired you from an organic standpoint when it comes to the game of basketball?
Oh, okay. That's a really good one.
Or coach, like someone like in the locker room,
Yeah, sure. So growing up as a kid, man, growing up in a single parent home, I did have an older brother, but there wasn't a lot of influence basketball wise. So I'm a kind of introverted kind of person. I keep to myself, but I enjoy being in a crowd, but don't want the light shine on me. And so I'm just very, I don't know. I'm always in my thoughts and I observe and I learn by what others around me do, whether that's bad or good. And so maybe growing up as a kid, I think a lot of it was just me absorbing from everything that I saw. I didn't really have anybody in my life, basketball wise, that can mold me and shape me into the player that I became. But I tell you what, when I was at the University of Tulsa, Coach John Phillips, who I actually had on this podcast in a previous episode, was an assistant coach at the time. And, being a walk-on athlete, I never got to get in the reps, so I always showed up to practice really early to get shots up. And I would always notice that he would always go to half court and lean up against the scorer's table. And all the guys would kind of come in and they would always gravitate towards him. And again, always observing, I picked up on that. I picked up on the relationships that he had with the athletes and how everybody would always gravitate towards him. And I knew that someday when I was a coach or a mentor or whatever, I wanted that same feeling where people felt they could come to me. And I think that's the role I filled as an assistant varsity basketball coach. Is I enjoy when those guys come visit me because I kind of see what I foreshadowed by those relationships that I had with that coach. So really good question. Coach, question number 5, last one, and then we'll kind of dive into this podcast. Shoot away.
Question, what do you enjoy most about coaching? I call coaching, I refer to myself not as a coach, but as a teacher.
Absolutely.
Because I want to teach students how to play, and the enjoyment that comes from just the activity. So do you have a basic philosophy?
Basic philosophy with what?
With what you do in terms of coaching, quote unquote, or teaching, or the game. How do you, at the end of it, it's not about, we all like to win.
Absolutely right.
But we can't win all the time. So what do you want to leave basically as a philosophy for those young people who you touch?
Right. So, what I always like to say is that as a coach, I've kind of had this mantra of, if you want to know if you're a good coach, ask your worst player. It's not about coaching the stars. It's about coaching the starting five to your last player the same. Now, you can't coach every player the same, but I mean, treating each player the same, giving them the same amount of feedback, as the starting point guard. And yeah, it's not all about the wins and losses. I kind of live by the quote of success for me is not in the win and loss column. Success for me is only going to be found out later in life when these kids come back after they've graduated high school, maybe even college, and they come back and thank me. That means I had more of an effect on them because they're going to forget the wins. They're going to forget the losses, except for maybe a state championship or a significant game that they remember, but they're going to remember how I treated them. So I hope that sometime down the road, they come back and they thank me for what I did for them. So that's kind of how I live my life as a coach. Well, I appreciate you guys shooting 5 questions at me. Let's go ahead and dive into this episode. So the first question I have actually is for you, Dario. You'll be joining me today as my co-host here. So I just like to start by asking you a question about Jim, what he meant to you growing up and how has he influenced you as a man today?
And my godfather, I'll say more than anything, just his communication and his general demeanor, and his communication and just his total disposition. He's taught me a lot of things. Never let your successes go to your head, and never let your failures go to your heart. You'll be in balance, just like he talks often about when you win and when you lose. So I would say just like his overall disposition, because I am a fiery person. I am a United States Marine. I am Dwight Davis' son. So I know I have a very, I know I can be very aggressive naturally, but being 41 years old now, I think I have learned a lot from my uncle, from my godfather, as learning to, especially as a Black man, to really learn to control your emotions and not be real knee-jerk. Growing up as a teenager, young man, sometimes that was pretty difficult to not knee-jerk and fly off the handle. And I wasn't perfect. I definitely had my moments. But I always tried to, think of the lessons and the conversations that we had.
Okay. All right. Very well. Well, I hope you appreciate hearing that from him, Coach. Next question I have for you is, for people that may be listening to this right now, they may or may not know your story. And I would just like to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about where you grew up and what your family and childhood life was like.
Well, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, born in Lincoln, North Carolina. And I'm the middle child between 2 sisters. And I knew I wanted to have a better life. That's why my folks, and when I say my folks, I have an auntie and an uncle that were very significant in my life. And we moved from North Carolina to Ohio in order to give my sisters and me a better opportunity in life. And as it has worked out, all 3 of us are college educated. And in fact, my oldest sister is a retired attorney, and my baby sister is a retired college professor. So the plan that my auntie and my uncle and my mother put together for the three of us was successful. And that was why we moved in the first place. And I'm very happy and very thankful that they had the vision, that they knew that they had to leave the South if they wanted us to succeed. And I think they were very proud of us. We are the elders in our family right now. But we have a very proud and rich history. My great-great-grandfather was born a slave in 1864. And I have a grandfather also that was one of the first Black state senators in the state of South Carolina.
Okay.
So yeah, we have a rich history. Unfortunately, I don't know my father's side since they were divorced when we were really young. Mm-hmm. But and that's why I say my life has been a blessing. Other people have seen things that they want us to achieve and accomplish, and through the grace of God, we have fulfilled some, if not all, of those dreams that other folk, our elders, had for us as children. And so I never knew any of my grandparents. I've met my grandfather on my father's side. I met him like twice, and my grandmother 2, maybe 3 times at most. Mm-hmm. So I only know one side of my family, one side of my history. One day I'd like to do the research to see exactly, who my dad was and his side of the family, because there's a whole side of the family I don't know.
Right.
But that being said, I used to tease people and said my life. I say it's part of the greatest story ever told, because you take 3 kids out of Lincoln, North Carolina, and I say you got a lawyer, a professor, and you got a guy that made a living, in sports, and I feel very happy to have had that life, and I sure didn't have that vision, but I knew I wanted an education. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about now young people wanting to grow up being an athletic person, earning their living, I didn't have that dream. My dream was to get an education and then teach. That's why I like to say I'm a teacher, not a coach. And I want to teach young people how to have certain experiences, and then what they do with it, that's up to them. But I want them to know that I care about them as people. And hopefully the lessons that I'm able to teach and touch on in life will help them in the other areas of their life to become better people.
Right. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, as a follow-up question to that, when did sports begin in your life?
Well, my uncle, bless his heart, I've been throwing a baseball. Baseball, in fact, was my best sport. I can say that without any qualifications, baseball was my best sport. I've been throwing a baseball as long as I can remember. And he'd come home from work and he'd have an old mitt, I'm left-handed and I was wild. And he'd sit down and catch a squat. He wanted me to be a pitcher. He'd get in a catch a squat and he'd throw that mitt up there, hit the mitt. So that hand-eye coordination. I believe me when I say I was wild. I'm like I said, I'm 4 years old, and that ball is going everywhere. And he'd throw it back to me. He'd get back in there, and he'd put that target up there. So that hand-eye coordination, seeing that target, is just like it's different than shooting a basketball. Mm-hmm. So I started liking basketball about in the 7th grade. I became very introverted because I played baseball as a pitcher, first baseman, outfielder. In football, I was a wide receiver or DB. But in basketball, I didn't need anyone else. All I needed was the ball and the hoop. And so I would spend, everybody was playing basketball, but baseball was my favorite. But and I started to learn and watch basketball, and I couldn't shoot, couldn't dribble, but I could hustle. And I said, well, if I can hustle, maybe I'll get chosen. So that's what I did. I would spend hours, and the more time I spent by myself, and I would sometimes walk to the court because I didn't want anybody to hear the ball bounce. The ball was like a Pied Piper. The people hear the ball, they follow you. Mm-hmm. And so I would kind of sneak up to the court and then not want the ball to bounce a lot because I wanted to be there by myself. And those hours of working out by myself and working on my skills and the thought I can always hustle. I can always, because guys that hustle and couldn't shoot, you still got chosen because you were a willing passer.
Yep.
See, so that's how it worked out. And the more time I spent, the better I became. But I wanted an education out of it. And when I found out that I didn't have to be always a good athlete because academics oftentimes figured into getting a scholarship.
Right.
I could get an academic scholarship or an athletic scholarships. I said, well, that's even better. So that's one of the things I decided to work on, and is being a good student. And if I wasn't a good student, I wasn't going to play anyway, because that was rule number one. And so having good grades wasn't a problem. It was how well I could play. So I ended up being a scholarship athlete and didn't pay for college at all. And like I say, I really have lived a blessed existence.
And so you've got a state high school championship underneath your belt, and did the college scholarships flow after that, or were they already kind of happening during that time for you?
Well, I was being recruited, but I didn't know the extent of how good I was going to be. You got to realize that the tallest player on our state high school basketball championship team was 6'4". We were short, but we were mighty, and we were quick, and we could play fast, or we could play. I had a wonderful coach. We could play fast, we could play slow, and because we had certain skills, the scholarships, and I was your classic tweener. Mm-hmm. I was 6'1", 6'2", and I ended up being about 6'2.5" my senior year. And I understand why I wasn't very highly recruited. You couldn't identify a position for me, but Coach Fred Taylor took a chance on me, I guess, and I accepted a scholarship to Ohio State, and and the rest is very fortunate. I've been blessed enough to win everything except the NCAA title, and that's something I'd like to give a shot at before I call my coaching career retirement.
Well, I like one thing that you said about the hustle aspect. One of the things that I always like to say is to my athletes is have a good day. And for me, what that is DAE, not DAY. And that's, you can always play defense. You can always play with a great attitude, and you can always play with all sorts of energy and enthusiasm and effort. Mm-hmm. And one thing, another accolade that you have is Defensive Player of the Year, correct? In the Big Ten?
I was MVP, so I don't know what that entails.
That's all of them. That's all the above. I thought it was defensive. Did you get an award for Defensive Player of the Year, or was it the MVP?
And 50 years ago this year.
All right.
You're talking to the MVP in the Big Ten.
I got you. Well, I love it because I always try to preach to my guys, you can always hustle. That is something that you have. It's a choice. You can't always, make every basket. You're going to have your days where you just can't, put it into the ocean, but you can control your effort and energy and enthusiasm and your hustle. That's a choice. And if you're not making that choice, well, then you're going to sit down and you're not going to play. So I like that you said that. Let's fast forward just a little bit. So you got recruited, you played. I'm curious to know what it was like for you and for your family, knowing that you were selected in the NBA draft. And once you found out that you were going to go play for LA with Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, and Jerry West, what was Take me back to that moment as an individual and as a family, what that felt like and what it meant to you.
Well, 50 years ago, it wasn't a big deal. In fact, I found out I was sitting, a company wanted to represent me, and they had flew me up from Columbus to Cleveland. It's like an hour and a half drive. And so I was sitting in their office, and it was, the draft had already began. And so the guy I was talking with, he said, well, let's see how the draft is going. And so he asked his secretary to see what was what, and she hooked it up. And they said that the Lakers took you. You've already been drafted. And I said, wow. And they said the Lakers drafted you. And so that was basically it. I flew on the plane back from Cleveland to Columbus. Because this is in March, and this is past March. This is about April, because the ABA had already drafted me. Indiana had drafted me in the ABA.
Okay.
And I actually liked that because Indiana is like 2.5 hours from Columbus.
Right. Yeah.
In those days, the Pacers was the best team in the ABA, and so I'm thinking, well, and I had more recognition being in the Big Ten.
Right.
And so, boom, that was cool. And I didn't really know anything about, because I wasn't following, and it wasn't my hope and my dream to be an NBA basketball player. I wanted my degree, and I got my degree. It took me an extra quarter. And my senior year, I was Scholar Athlete of the Year at Ohio State. And we were Big Ten champions, and I was most valuable player in the league. And I was happy and content. And I was going to go to law school or go to continue on and get a master's in education, because I wanted to end up being a superintendent of a school district. So those were my goals.
Okay.
That I had kind of set in front of me, and pro basketball wasn't even a thought or a dream. This is, once again, something that was given to me. But I'm happy because once I found out who was on the team, because I wasn't following the NBA basketball. It wasn't in my purview, as they say these days. It wasn't part of who I was. I was interested in doing other things because, I watched the football players anticipate being drafted and what they were going to do with their money, and then some guys who were told that they were going to be first-round picks ended up not even getting drafted in the second day. And so I wasn't putting all my eggs into that basket. And so I was concentrating on getting my education, doing what I need to do, and then going on with the rest of my life. But here you go again. God had other things in store for me. And I can only say, I accepted them very graciously. I'm very happy. What we've been able to do, my sisters, we got her all the way through, law school, and my baby sister, like I say, she's doctor. She's retired now. Everybody's retired in my family except for me right now. And some people, wherever I go, people say, "Aren't you retired?" But no, I still have. I haven't retired. I'm just doing other things.
Yeah.
And those other things are the things that really make me who I am. The message is not about sports. It's about life. The message is how you carry yourself and how you continue in your life, help other people. And it's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's really important. Random acts of kindness go so far in helping other people, willingness to help other people.
Yep.
See, and you don't have to worry about, it's nothing that you have to return. It's just seeing somebody in need and
Right.
Can I help you?
Yep.
Opening a door, saying, please, thank you, and may I. These are the things that this country is in more of a need of than anything else these days, is rather than trying to be the biggest, be the best, and worrying about how much money we make. That's not a status symbol. Status symbol, I believe, at the end of the day, is what you've done, not for yourself, but how you helped others.
Right. Yep. I love the humble spirit, man. I absolutely love it. All right, let's kind of get into a little bit of the NBA here. What is something that you took away from being around those guys that you played? Maybe some of your most memorable moments as a player. We'll get into the coaching in a little bit, but just as a player, the people that you played with. You know, you talked about Lenny Wilkins, people that mentored you, guided you. What's something that you can take away, and what are some of your most memorable moments?
Well, not having a lot of money growing up, because I carried papers from the 7th grade to the last day of the summer when going into my senior year of high school. I had this thing. I didn't want to be known as the paper boy my senior year of high school. And it was important for me to be able to pay my own way. And I know money is important and it will continue to be important, but I want to be comfortable. It's been my life. I want to be comfortable, and I wanted to be able to do for myself and help other people. So that's basically what I've been trying to do, and I love winning. See, I would cry when I was a kid every time we lost. Losing just used to hurt my soul, and I didn't want to be known as a loser. And when I got traded from to Cleveland after winning, being on a team, and granted I didn't play very much my rookie year because I was being groomed to play in Jerry West's spot. See, Jerry was supposed to retire after that first year, and I was all year long, I was being groomed to be the next guard, to come in and take leadership. So I wasn't worried about scoring points. I was making sure that I knew what I need to know. So when Jerry left and it was my time to play, I dotted my I's and crossed my T's. Casey Jones and I at timeouts would talk. If you ever go back and watch any old Lakers film, Casey would keep 3x5 cards. And as soon as the timeout was called, he'd be writing things down. He'd slip them to Coach Sharman. And so I'd be teasing KC, what are you writing down? And say, and because, you know, we had this kind of relationship, and he would share what he was writing down, and Coach Sharman would look at what KC wrote down, and he put it in his vest pocket, and then he'd go into the huddle. And so KC would tell me what he wrote down, because KC he was old enough that he still could play, but didn't. So in practices, KC, if we didn't have enough, KC would guard me. And KC was one of the best defensive guards in the history of this game. So I was happy that he and I had that relationship, because that's the basics of winning, is understanding what your role is and accepting your role. And not everybody can do that in the major leagues, because everybody is chasing the dollar. Everybody wants to play, but nobody wants to do the dirty work. See, so you can't win championships if nobody's willing to do the dirty work. You can't winning championships is about understanding what your role is and fulfilling your role. For 1 through 13, 1 through 15, whatever it is, people got to be on the same page. And that's why I started to learn. And I was blessed with that from the 9th grade. I started playing basketball really in the 9th grade. And the first game I played, and it wasn't even varsity basketball, it was called high Y basketball in Columbus. And so I didn't even start the game. And I came in midway through the first quarter, and coach gave me one assignment. He told me, get the ball moving. And so obviously, after almost 60 years of basketball, that one thing, get the ball moving. Ball movement is essential if you want to win in the game of basketball.
Yep.
See, if you watch today's game, everybody wants to dribble the ball. Everybody wants to shoot. They want to exhaust their ability to score themselves before they give the ball up.
Right.
And basketball is not a me game. Basketball is a we game. And those teams that will end up going to the Final Four and the team that ultimately is going to be the winning team in this year's championship, as every year, is going to be the team that plays together.
Yep.
The team that understands it's not about me, but it's about we. If you want to be success in life, that it flows into that as well. It's who else you touch in your life. It's bringing people into your life and not shutting people out of your life. And it's the sharing aspect that makes your life, your community, your school grow. Growth is about sharing. And if you can't share, you're not going to grow. Intellectually, mentally, physically, it doesn't happen because you need other ideas to counteract your ideas. And that's the way the process is. You got to bring more in. And what you don't use, you set it aside, or you acknowledge it. I don't need that now, but you remember it because you might need it later.
That's right.
So these are things that I learned early on that once again, if you go to a camp of mine or you ask me to be a speaker, these are things that I like to teach about. I like to talk about because these are the things that are going to make you successful, not only in sport, but more importantly in life. You see, we got to forget our egos. And so many of us in the athletic realm, we think that the sun rises over here and sets over here, rather than saying, no, I'm just a part of this. I'm just a part of what happens to me and to my family and to my teammates. And it's the best part of me if I can open my eyes and look up and see what else is happening around me. I'm missing out on a world of happiness that's there. But most of us just tend to focus on what we are doing and what's happening to me.
Well, coaches, players, and fans listening to this, Coach Jim Cleamons just probably dropped about 5 to 7 mic drops in that last 5 minutes, man. That was some good stuff and some good meat and content, man. So thank you for that. Dario, you want to chime in? You good? You want me to keep going?
No, I got a question. Steph Curry.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of him, this is kind of a 2-part question. I've ever asked you this. Outside of him, who is the best pure shooter that you have ever seen, be it someone you coached or played with? And if the 3-point line was instituted in 1971, these are just kind of fun questions. The first one a little more serious than the second. We can't go back in time, but yeah, outside of Steph Curry, the best pure shooter you've played with or coached. And the second part of that question, if 50 years ago there was a 3-point line, how do you think that would affect current records right now?
Well,
LeBron and Bryant and Harden, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, LeBron is just a physical specimen.
Right.
I mean, this brother. I mean, he's thick. I mean, he's thick. I mean, he's 6'8", 6'9", but he's a freight train, and I respect that. I pride myself in taking charges, okay? But I don't know if I would take his charge.
No.
Hey, my common sense said, get out of the way of this.
Yeah, you get out that way.
But
who's the best pure shooter though, outside of Steph?
Oh man, well look, Craig.
I know,
Hodges,
or your top 2 or 3.
Well, hey, Craig Hodges is what? There's only 2 3-time winners.
Yep.
Bird and Craig, if I'm not mistaken. So I got to throw Craig Hodges in there.
Really? Okay. Okay.
And because Craig can shoot that thing.
He good.
Yeah.
Ooh. Trent Tucker was an outstanding shooter. But Steph Curry's dad, I sometimes joke with people who have not seen Dale Curry shoot.
Curry.
Yeah, I remember Dale.
Dale Curry could shoot that thing now.
That was back in our day, Dario.
Yep.
Yeah, he could shoot that thing. He would catch it, turn, and shoot it all in one motion. And he's bigger than Steph.
Mm-hmm.
So those people, and I love the things that Steph has done. I had the pleasure of meeting Steph when he was in the 6th grade. I did a clinic. I did a clinic down in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Dale was there. And he brought Steph, and he said, "This is my little fella here, and he wants to be a pro player." So I'm so very happy that dreams do come true. And he set that up and out there when he was in elementary school. So I'm so very happy that he accomplished his dream. Those are the things that make this game so rewarding and worthwhile. Is that we can see milestones that we set for ourselves, and not just so in our life that I accomplished that. Check it off. And one of the most important notches is being a good person, being a good human being. And I think that's the real message that we should all set out there that we want to be. Not necessarily, right, just in general, just be good people. I mean, as I look at the world that we're living in now, and wondering what kind of world is going to be 15, 20 years from now. Once again, I've got daughters out here, and I want them to be happily married and have families of their own. And I question, I look around at our country and I say, what are we doing? I mean, the civility and lack thereof of embracing other cultures and other people with the same rights and respect that each one of us deserves because we're human beings. It saddens my heart. And these are things that I'd like to see beginning to change. And the young people in this world, they've got to, once again, I'm disappointed in my generation because some of it wasn't genuine. I think if our political stances, both in life and what we talk about, putting that to practice, we have fallen short on our responsibilities of teaching those that are coming behind us. So I think we got to tighten up our belts, and we got to show that this world is not their world, it's our world. It's not your country, this is our country, and we have to begin to identify what kind of world and what kind of country we really stand for, and stand up for what's right, and not be afraid to voice things that we see that are ill-spirited, mean-spirited. That doesn't represent who I think we are in our best light.
Very well said. Good answer there. Good question, Dario. Let's kind of transition a little bit. How did you transition from, playing in the NBA to coaching in the NBA? You kind of asked me that question in a roundabout way, so I'm going to kind of put it back on you. How did that transition from playing to coaching happen for you? And was it, I know you mentioned that you wanted to be a teacher, but at what point did you recognize that this was going to be in your path?
One day at practice, I was at Ohio State, and I saw my coach. He had a clipboard, and he's wearing nice slacks. And I knew I didn't give him in trouble. I didn't envision the trouble, and the trouble is how to reach people, how to get young people to do what you want them to do. Not so much mind control, but those of us that play team sports realize a team is somewhat like a family. And you don't want to be the one child that's a malcontent or the one child that's always being disciplinary. So I've always been on good teams. I was blessed. I lost. Our teams lost 3 games when I was a junior and 2 games when I was a senior. So my whole high school career, I lost 5 basketball games. I wasn't accustomed to losing because I had good people around me. We were all doing the same things because that was our family.
For each other.
We didn't want to disappoint each other. You do what you're asked to do, and those are part of the keys of success. You plan your work and you work your plan.
That's right.
And you can't have malcontents. And if you have malcontents, You have a family meeting and you talk out the issues so everyone stays straight on what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Life is simple. Follow your orders. Because it's about being successful. It's about winning. And unless you got a better idea about how to do it, you fall in line. So I never thought there was any difference, because I had wonderful coaches. I had wonderful teachers, and they cared about us because it wasn't for a lack of discipline. Part of the discipline is what made us successful. You couldn't just, none of us were spoiled brats. I know if you didn't get your way, you didn't go off and pitch a tantrum. That's part of growing up. You didn't get your big boy pants tied into a knot. You accepted responsibility. That's what happens with good teachers and good in sports. It's not cookie cutter, but if you want to be successful, these are some of the rules that you have to learn to adhere to be successful. It's a certain discipline. And I never figured in my wildest dreams that there were people out there that didn't want to be successful, and no matter what the coach or the team said, they went off and did it their own way. That never came into my mind, because I was always on good teams and we cared about each other. That state championship team that you're talking about back in 1967, where our tallest kid was 6'4". I had two of those kids. We went to elementary school together. So three of us have been knowing each other since at least the fourth grade, all the way through. So we knew each other. We knew what was in our hearts. We knew how we grew up, and we cared about that. See, I've never been really, the most selfish teams I were on were those early Cleveland Cavalier teams where Cleveland was the worst team in the league. When I got notification I'd been traded from Los Angeles to Cleveland, I'm 22 years old. I cried because Cleveland was the worst team in the league. We had, in those old days, we had calendars, this whole schedule. And they were tall as you were because of the whole play, and they went down. And teams, when they saw Cleveland, they write down W. And I got traded from a world championship team as a rookie to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I cried because I knew how other people felt about the Cleveland Cavaliers. You're talking about changing culture. And I was so happy. I played 209 minutes my rookie year. My first 5 games or 6 games in Cleveland, because Lenny held out. I played more minutes in Cleveland in the first 10 games of my sophomore year season than I played my entire rookie year. All right. And Lenny Wilkins saw what I was going through, and team, they almost actually wanted to feel, argue in the locker room. I wanted to say, what the hell are you guys talking about? You're the worst team in the league, but you guess what? It was a team of first-round draft picks. It's a team of being the first pick.
Yep.
And they were so accustomed to everything going their way. Like, me play defense, me pass the ball. That's your job. Your job is to pass the ball to me. My job is to shoot it. I mean, I'm thinking, dude, what's wrong with you? That's why you guys are the worst team in the league.
Yep.
Everybody thought their job was to score points. Nobody wanted to do the dirty work. And you ask me to this day, I'd rather score 2 points and win than score 22 points and lose.
Yep. So
what are you going to do to help us win? And when Lenny finally came and he brought the same coach, see, they wouldn't. My first 2 weeks, 2 weeks of practice, I really thought I would have to fight after every practice because I didn't pass the ball to so-and-so when they thought I should have passed the ball. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, dude, I only got one ball. I got one ball and I got 4 guys running around like this. And so we had to really have these heart-to-heart talks. So when Lenny showed up, man, I was happy as a fat rat in cheese factory because I had somebody, see, I didn't know enough, only my second year. I didn't know enough. I didn't demand or get their respect because I was just a second-year player. But now when Lenny comes in and he's telling them the same thing that I'm trying to get across, it was like music to the ears. And we had a culture change. And he kind of had to, he set the rules and they respected that. So this is what happens when people talk about me, where I need my shots. I need my touches. See, and it's all about the money, because the more points you score, supposedly the better player you are. That's not necessarily true. That just means you're taking more shots.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So once again, we have to begin to understand what the ingredients of success are, and what it is to really, I don't want to use the word sacrifice, because we all, good teams, there's more sacrifices going on than the average eye ever knows. There are a lot of good players on good teams, but they aren't the stars. They understand how to contribute to make that star a star. See? And that's the thing we had in Los Angeles when we first got out there with Kobe. Kobe wanted the ball every time down the floor. He wanted to score. Every time his touch had the lead shot. And he became so much a better player when he realized, I don't have to shoot the ball every time I touch it. Mm-hmm. I don't have to look for a shot every time I have the ball in my hands. And when that giving spirit in him, which basketball is all about. See, the more you give in basketball, the more you do receive. Not all at once, but you start now spreading that joy around. Here, have one on me. Then your shots become even easier, because you become a willing passer. You play better defense. People forget that Kobe ultimately made, all defensive team. All right. So his offense, wanting to score, translated in better defense because he learned how to score. He became a better teammate because he understood what made a good team.
So is it like, from what I'm hearing from you, your insightfulness at a younger age, your humble spirit, that, you sound like me in a way, in the way that you would pay attention to the way the coaches interacted with the players to get people to play together. Is that kind of the winner's mindset that you kind of had that led you into coaching because you saw that happening? Or was there anything specific where you're like, I want to be a coach?
Because I wanted to see our game continue to thrive and survive. And it's not about money. It's not about recognition and all these other things that are lost as quick as they're made. It's more substantial than that. It's deeper than that. When you start talking about your livelihood, having a house, providing for your family, we all need money, but it's how we use our money and how we earn our money and how we respect the people that help us make money. See, and that comes down to dollar and cents, because when you sit down at the bargaining table and you talk about your contributions to the team and to the success, management 9 times out of 10 goes to a stat sheet and say, well, you only did this.
Right.
And so then as a player, you realize, wow, you used me. Now I got to start thinking more about me. And that is the demise of sport, because then you're realizing that your value isn't what you thought it should be, because you are right. You're a measurable contributing person to a winning organization if you win a championship or you're there, whatever, as opposed to your ability is down to a statistical guy or analytical guy. Right. You only did this. Mm-hmm. Give me a break. Yep. You're saying that, right, my only did is not good enough to warrant me a decent raise or a better livelihood for me and my family. So that's why, guys, that's why they turn the game in having fun into how much your value is, because you only did this. Right. You only scored this. You didn't do this. Well, and so guys realize that they see how players are manipulated, and they say that's not going to happen to me. So that's why guys who are scoring points, they only start looking to score points. And winning takes a backseat to how many points I get, how many touches I get, because now what your brand is this, your brand is that. And you've got shoe companies spending more money, and this is the notoriety. So it becomes exploitation rather than taking a good look at what's really important.
Right.
And what's really important is building the camaraderie amongst your team, that we all are in this thing together.
Right.
Your success ultimately leads to my success, and my success leads to your success. So don't let management divide us in terms of who's the most valuable player here, because we all are doing pretty good, and we all want to do better.
Yep.
But the fact is, we have to do something more. And my battery's getting low, baby.
Well, this is a good opportunity for us to kind of take a little halftime real quick, and I'm going to shoot 5 real quick questions to you, and then we'll get into the last part of the podcast. So my first question to you is, if you could go back in time and change your career, what would that career change be? Would it be teacher?
Superintendent Cleamons?
I've enjoyed the life I've had.
Yeah.
And I'd take a second dip on what I've already done.
All right.
Because I'm comfortable with it.
All right.
I don't think I've gotten out of my lane. I think I recognize my value. I understand my value, and I like where I am. I like the people that I meet, because a lot of them are athletics. They're athletes. They're teachers. They're coaches. And I like the lane I'm in.
All right. Question number 2. I know you said that you're retired, but you're not retired. But since your retirement, we'll put it that way, what's one thing that you enjoy doing right now?
I like the fact that I don't have a real schedule. I do what my wife needs me to do, and if she doesn't need me to do anything, I got the day off.
All right.
I better do the honeydew list.
All right. All right. So favorite movie or favorite movie genre?
I'm not a movie buff. I have to think about that one.
All right. I stumped you there.
Yeah, I don't go to a lot of movies simply because during the season, your life evolves around the schedule.
That's right.
And scheduling games. So, and I don't like, and once again, I don't like to lose. So I stay focused during the season until what I need to do. And then when it's over with, I just kind of celebrate and do what I need to do.
All right. Well, let me see if you can answer this question. I don't know if you're a reader or not, but what's the last book you read?
Well, I've got President Obama's book over here that I need to get started on.
Okay.
And I was talking to a friend today, and he tells me I got to read John Thompson's book.
Okay.
He says that those have to be my next 2 reads.
All right. So you've got books to read, but do you remember the last book you read though?
I read articles in magazines, and my best book I really have liked in my life is a book called The Prophet.
Okay.
All
right. Last question. I hope I don't stump you on this one either, but you sound like me in some ways. So you have a favorite scripture?
Oh, my favorite scripture is probably the 23rd Psalm.
Okay.
That when I get in trouble with myself, I try to come back home, and I've known that since I was 4 years old, and we had to learn that in elementary school.
Yeah.
And and every Monday morning we'd have to repeat it, and so that the 23rd Psalm is probably the one that I come back home to.
All right. Very well. Well, thank you for participating in our halftime, man. Thank you for listening to Coach Mike on the Mic. Let's Talk Hoops. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure you subscribe and click the notification button and then share it with your friends. If you're so inclined to do so, would you please rate and review this podcast so that I can help grow this community of listeners? I hope there was something that you heard today that entertained you or connected you to the game of basketball. If you'd like to be a guest or know someone who would be a great guest on the show, please comment below or reach out to me on any of my social media platforms. Until the next time we meet, the ball is now in your court. Be someone's champion today.